Emma Carter stepped into the high-end restaurant, her simple floral dress flowing gently as she walked across the polished marble floor. The air was thick with the scent of truffle oil, aged wine, and the faintest hint of expensive cologne from the well-dressed patrons occupying the candlelit tables. She wasn't one for extravagant places, but tonight, after a long and exhausting day, she had wanted to treat herself to a quiet meal. She approached the hostess stand with a warm smile. "A table for one, please." The hostess, a young woman with sharp cheekbones and a tighter-than-necessary ponytail, barely concealed her disdain as she gave Emma a quick once-over. Her eyes swept over the modest dress, the worn leather handbag clutched in Emma's fingers, and the scuffed flats on her feet. It was clear she didn't belong. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" The hostess's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Emma's smile faltered slightly, but she refused to let the woman's tone intimidate her. "Yes, I'd like a table for one." With a dramatic sigh, the hostess plucked a menu from the stack and gestured for Emma to follow. Instead of leading her toward the cozy, softly lit booths or the elegantly decorated tables near the grand windows overlooking the city, she guided Emma toward a small, tucked-away table in the farthest corner of the restaurant. A table that might as well have been in the storage room for how out of sight it was. Emma ignored the slight and took her seat, placing her bag beside her. She was here to enjoy a meal, not impress anyone. She flipped open the menu, scanning the options. The prices were steep, but she had no problem paying for good food. She settled on a simple pasta dish and a glass of wine, waving down a passing waiter to place her order. Minutes passed, and Emma occupied herself by looking around. The restaurant buzzed with conversations, laughter, clinking glasses, and the occasional flash of a camera as wealthy diners captured their extravagant meals for social media. No one paid her any mind, which suited her just fine. Just as she was beginning to relax, a man in a black button-down shirt approached her table. His expression was unreadable, but there was something stiff about his stance, something rehearsed. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have a strict policy against non-paying customers loitering." His voice was flat, professional, but beneath it there was an unmistakable edge of condescension. Emma frowned, confused. "I just ordered my meal." The waiter's gaze flickered down to her attire, then back up. He didn't look convinced. "We require a credit card up front for situations like this." A few heads turned at the exchange. Emma felt her face grow warm. She reached into her bag, fingers searching for her wallet. When she felt nothing but the smooth lining of the purse, her stomach dropped. She had switched bags before leaving the house, leaving her card and ID behind. I must have left my card at home," she said quietly, "but I can pay when the bill comes." The waiter's mouth pressed into a thin line. "I'm afraid we can't allow that." Emma's throat tightened. "I can give you my name. I come here sometimes." "Ma'am," another voice interrupted, this one belonging to an older man with graying hair and a neatly pressed suit. The manager. He had appeared beside the waiter, his arms crossed as he glanced at her like she was an inconvenience rather than a customer. "We have to enforce our policies. If you can't provide a payment method, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." People were watching now. The whispers reached her ears, hushed voices murmuring about the poor woman who had tried to eat somewhere she clearly couldn't afford. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat and slowly rose from her chair. The humiliation burned through her like fire, but she refused to let them see her crumble. She gathered her bag, nodding stiffly. "I understand." With as much dignity as she could muster, she turned and walked toward the exit. The second she stepped outside, the cold night air hit her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. She hugged her arms around herself, debating whether to walk home or call someone. Then, just as she was about to start down the sidewalk, a low, powerful hum filled the air. The unmistakable roar of a high-performance engine. A sleek black Porsche pulled up in front of the restaurant, its headlights cutting through the dim streetlights. The valet outside straightened immediately, his previously bored expression shifting into one of alert professionalism. The driver's side door swung open, and a tall man in a sharply tailored suit stepped out. Emma's breath hitched. Her husband had arrived. The moment the Porsche pulled up, the atmosphere outside the restaurant shifted. The valet, who had been idly scrolling through his phone, straightened up, his eyes widening with recognition. The restaurant staff, who had been dismissive just moments ago, suddenly glanced toward the car, their previous indifference replaced with curiosity and anticipation. Even some of the patrons dining near the grand windows turned their heads, their conversations pausing mid-sentence. Emma stood still, her pulse quickening as the driver's side door swung open. And then, he stepped out. Alexander Carter, the billionaire businessman known for his ruthless deals and effortless charm, emerged from the car with his usual commanding presence. His crisp navy blue suit was impeccably tailored, fitting his tall, broad frame like a second skin. The dim glow of the streetlights accentuated his chiseled jawline, his dark hair neatly styled, and his striking green eyes scanning the scene before him with quiet intensity. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to come looking for her. She hadn't even told him where she was going. The murmurs around her grew louder as people recognized him. Alexander Carter was not just a businessman. He was a name that carried weight, a man whose face had graced countless financial magazines and news reports. A man who commanded respect in every room he entered. And right now, his sharp gaze was locked onto his wife. Emma felt a whirlwind of emotions: relief, embarrassment, and a lingering sense of hurt from the way she had been treated. She shifted slightly, instinctively crossing her arms over her chest as Alexander strode toward her with long, purposeful steps. He stopped just inches away, his eyes scanning her face, his expression unreadable. "Emma," he said, his voice low and smooth, laced with concern. "What happened?" She hesitated. Part of her wanted to brush it off, to pretend the humiliation she had just endured didn't matter. But before she could answer, the restaurant's manager suddenly appeared beside them, his previously cold demeanor now replaced with forced politeness. "Mr. Carter, what a pleasure to see you," the manager said, his voice almost unrecognizably pleasant. He clasped his hands together, flashing a tight smile. "We didn't realize your wife was dining with us tonight." Alexander's jaw tensed. He turned slightly, his piercing gaze fixing on the man. "You didn't realize?" he echoed, his tone deceptively calm. The manager swallowed hard. "It was a misunderstanding, I assure you. If Mrs. Carter would like to return inside, we'd be happy to accommodate her." Emma's stomach twisted at the sheer hypocrisy. A moment ago, they couldn't get rid of her fast enough. Now, they were suddenly eager to serve her because of who she was married to. Alexander exhaled slowly, his patience visibly thinning. His hand found Emma's, his fingers warm as they closed around hers in a reassuring grip. He looked back at the manager, his expression cool. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You humiliated my wife, refused her service, and threw her out, and now, because you recognize me, you're willing to accommodate her?" The manager's face paled. "Sir, Alexander didn't let him finish. "I don't do business with establishments that treat people differently based on appearances," he said icily. He pulled Emma closer, his voice dropping slightly as he added, "And I certainly don't let anyone disrespect my wife." A ripple of silence followed. The weight of his words hung in the air. The restaurant staff stood frozen, their expressions a mix of regret and fear, while the bystanders nearby watched with wide eyes. Emma felt Alexander's grip on her tighten slightly before he turned to her, his expression softening. "Let's go." She nodded, feeling an unexpected surge of comfort from his presence. Without another word, Alexander guided her toward the passenger side of the Porsche, opening the door for her before she slid inside. He rounded the car, sliding into the driver's seat and starting the engine. The powerful purr filled the silence between them. As they pulled away from the restaurant, Emma exhaled, staring out the window at the passing city lights. "You didn't have to do that," she murmured, breaking the silence. Alexander's hands remained steady on the wheel, his gaze fixed ahead. "Yes, I did," he said firmly. Then, after a brief pause, he glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Emma, why didn't you?" The Porsche glided smoothly down the streets of the city, the gentle hum of the engine providing an oddly soothing background to the tension that had been building between them. Emma sat quietly, her fingers curling into the fabric of her dress, unsure of how to process the events that had unfolded in the last hour. The humiliation at the restaurant still stung, and though Alexander's presence had reassured her in the moment, She felt a deep unease growing inside her. She could feel the heat of his gaze on her, even though his focus was entirely on the road. His silence was heavy, but she knew better than to push him. Alexander wasn't a man who spoke without reason, and when he did speak, his words were measured and deliberate. "Thank you," she finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but the gratitude was genuine. "I didn't expect you to come after me like that." Alexander's eyes flickered to her for a split second before returning to the road. "I'll always come after you," he said, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of something she couldn't quite place. "No one treats you like that, Emma. Not while I'm around." She wasn't sure if it was the way he said it or the way his words felt, but she couldn't shake the tightness in her chest. He cared, yes, but there was something else there. Something that made her feel small. Almost as if she were a possession to be protected rather than a partner to be respected. "You're right," she said, her voice tentative, testing the waters. "But I didn't want you to make a scene." Alexander's grip on the steering wheel tightened just slightly, and Emma could see the muscles in his jaw flex. "It's not a scene, Emma. It's called standing up for what's right. You don't deserve to be treated that way, and I won't allow it." She nodded quietly, not wanting to argue. But the more she thought about it, the more the events in the restaurant replayed in her mind. She wasn't angry with the manager or the staff anymore. Not exactly. But the way they had looked at her, the way they had judged her before even knowing who she was, unsettled her. "Do you think they only acted that way because of how I looked?" she asked, the question hanging between them. "I mean, they didn't even give me a chance to explain. It was just, you don't belong here." Alexander glanced at her again, his gaze intense but not unkind. "People are quick to judge, Emma. That's how the world works. You've seen it 100 times before, haven't you? How people decide who you are based on what you wear or how you speak, not who you actually are." She nodded slowly. Yes, she had seen it, lived it. From the way people looked at her before they knew she was married to a billionaire, to the way they looked at her when they discovered it. She had always lived in the shadow of someone else's perception, never truly able to shake off the weight of those expectations. But tonight, it felt different. It felt as though, for the first time, she was seeing the full extent of the world Alexander inhabited, the world that judged and discarded people based on their status. She knew the life she had married into wasn't one of simplicity or ease, but seeing it so plainly, feeling it so personally, had left a bitter taste in her mouth. "I hate that it's like that," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "It's like nothing I do matters unless I look the part. And it doesn't matter how much I try to fit in. There's always something that sets me apart." Alexander's hand shifted from the wheel to hers, his fingers warm and firm around hers. "I don't care how you look, Emma. I never have. And neither should you. You're more than what anyone can see on the outside." She turned her head, meeting his gaze for the first time in what felt like hours. There was sincerity in his eyes, but also something else, something deeper. He wasn't just comforting her, he was reminding her of the value he saw in her, something that she had almost forgotten in the whirlwind of the last few years. "I know," she whispered. "I just don't know how to stop feeling like I'm always being judged. I don't even know if I can fit into this life with you." The car slowed as they approached a stoplight, and for a moment Alexander didn't speak. He simply looked at her, his expression unreadable, before the light changed and he accelerated again, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "I married you for who you are, Emma," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "Not for who anyone thinks you should be. You don't have to fit into my world. You just need to be yourself." A wave of emotion washed over her, and she blinked back the sudden moisture in her eyes. She hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected him to say something so simple. Yet, it was exactly what she needed to hear. "Thank you," she said again, her voice thick with emotion. "I needed to hear that more than you know." The car turned onto a quieter street, and Emma relaxed slightly, her fingers squeezing his in return. The tension wasn't gone, but it felt more manageable now. They had a long road ahead, both in their relationship and in the journey of navigating the world around them. But in that moment, with Alexander's hand in hers and the city lights flickering around them, Emma realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this fight. The car drifted through the night, the rhythmic hum of the engine punctuating the silence that had settled between Emma and Alexander. As they passed through familiar streets, Emma found herself lost in thought, the weight of everything pressing on her chest. She had never felt like she truly belonged in this world, this high society that Alexander inhabited. It was a life full of rules, expectations, and judgments that she could never quite meet. The thought of it all made her stomach twist with anxiety. Alexander, on the other hand, seemed so at ease. He had grown up in this world, a world that she still found foreign, no matter how much she had tried to adapt. The parties, the events, the endless socializing, it all felt like a carefully constructed facade. Every time she stepped into one of those rooms, she felt like she was playing a role, pretending to be someone she wasn't. But tonight had shaken something inside her. The restaurant, the way they had treated her, the way Alexander had immediately stepped in, it all made her question the life she had chosen. Did she truly belong here? Or was she just a woman swept up in the fantasy of a billionaire's world? She glanced at Alexander, his expression focused on the road ahead, his jaw set with determination. There was no trace of doubt in his demeanor. For him, this life was natural, effortless. "Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a world that isn't yours?" she asked quietly, breaking the silence. Alexander's grip on the steering wheel tightened for a moment before he glanced at her, his green eyes unreadable in the dim light. "I know exactly what you mean," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've spent most of my life in this world, and it can feel like you're suffocating under its weight sometimes. People want things from you, expect things from you, but the truth is, Emma, this life isn't who I am either. It's just a part of it." Emma turned her head, studying his profile as he drove. There was something about his words that resonated with her. He wasn't just the billionaire CEO the world saw. There was more to him, more than the suit, the car, the money. She had seen that man in moments of vulnerability, in the quiet spaces between meetings and events. That was the man she had married. "I just don't know how to fit in," she said softly, her voice betraying a vulnerability she hadn't shared with anyone before. "I can't pretend to be someone I'm not, but sometimes I feel like that's all I'm doing. I don't know how to make this work." For a long moment there was silence. Then Alexander spoke, his tone softer now, almost gentle. "You don't have to fit in, Emma. I don't need you to be anyone but yourself. The world might expect you to change, to conform, but I don't. I never will." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. It was exactly what she needed to hear, but it still left a lingering question in her mind. Could she ever truly accept this world, or was she destined to always feel like an outsider? "Then why do I feel so lost?" she whispered, the words leaving her before she could stop them. Alexander's eyes flickered to hers again, and for a brief second she saw the pain that lay behind his carefully constructed facade. "Because it's hard. You can't change who you are overnight, and sometimes it feels like you'll never fit in. But what matters is that you stay true to yourself. That's all I've ever asked." She nodded slowly, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that they could find their way together, even in a world that felt so foreign. But the fear, the doubt, lingered like a shadow in the back of her mind. Could she really live in this world without losing herself in the process? As they neared their home, the sleek lines of the mansion coming into view, Emma's thoughts slowed. The house, a symbol of everything Alexander had worked for, loomed in front of them, a towering reminder of the life they led, a life she had chosen to be a part of, even if it felt like a constant struggle. They pulled into the driveway, and Alexander turned off the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the tension in the car. Emma sat still for a moment, her hands resting on her lap. She wasn't sure what to say next. "You don't have to do this alone, Emma," Alexander said after a long pause. His voice was thick with something she couldn't place, something raw. "We'll figure it out. Together." His words hung in the air, filling the car with an unspoken promise. The weight of it was almost too much to bear, but as she looked at him, Emma knew that he was right. They would figure it out. She didn't have to fit into his world. She just had to find her place in it. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Twice, the thought echoed in her mind. Twice she had doubted herself, doubted them. But this time, she wouldn't let the fear take over. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. Twice she had been reminded that the journey wasn't about fitting into a world that wasn't hers. It was about building one where they both belonged.